Hey guys, Captain JGB84 here at the movie review of Sanctum. Excuse me, I'm just having my dinner. Or, as I call it, shit. I mean, this is probably one of the worst movie I've seen this year so far. I mean, this is being labeled as a James Cameron film. James Cameron is the executive producer. If this was a James Cameron film, I would expect it to be better, the 3D would have been better, and it just would have been a lot more fun. I mean, this movie bore the shit out of me. I mean, there were times I were at, like, the edge of my seat, yeah, but, like, at times you just sort of kind of sit there being bored. I mean, whenever, okay, the story is, it's inspired by a true story, so I don't know what it means to be inspired, but anyways, this guy, Ian Grufford, he's funding this whole cave expedition. There's this huge cave they found in Papua New Guinea, and it's massive, at least like a few hundred feet, like maybe about like 250 feet diameter. And when you get to the bottom of it, there's a series of caves, systems, waterways, everything that eventually leads to the nearby ocean. And pretty much him, well, he's not down there, he's just the rich guy funding it all, but pretty much it's a bunch of explorers. The lead guy is Frank, who's just sort of exploring it. And before we even get to the cave, we're introduced to his son, who he hasn't seen. His son Josh. Josh hasn't seen Frank for at least a few years. He's been living off with his mother. Now he's in his 20s, and we'll see the cave. So, Carl is played by Ian Grufford, the guy who's funding it all. Carl and Carl's girlfriend Victoria are going to come to visit. So they get there, they get down there. It's interesting. Then something goes wrong. Frank, while on a bit of a scuba exploration with this other girl, something goes wrong with her air, and she dies. She drowns. So yeah, but this is the problem with this movie, is that whenever they kill off a character, you either don't like the character or feel for it. Or just, you don't know much about them to feel for. You don't know much about the characters to feel for them, or you think, oh, maybe they deserved it, or you actually do care for them. There's one death in this entire thing that you do care for. And then being white guys, I'm white, because there's a chance the cave's going to be flooded because there's a huge storm coming up. And of course they stay down there. The storm hits and only 2 of them get out. So there's 6 guys left. But the 6th guy, his name's Luco, I think he's like a native or something. While trying to, this rock pushes in the way of the entrance. He tries to stop it but gets sort of pushed into the area and bangs his head and breaks every bone in his body. But they find him, he's still alive, and they have to drown him because he's no use to them. So then there's 5 people left. Frank, Josh, Carl, Victoria, his girlfriend, and this other guy named George, who's a bit of a veteran, kind of like Frank. Right from the start, you know who's gonna die. The other girl who died earlier, they brought her body back, and Frank's like, okay, you have to wear this wetsuit. Victoria's like, I'm not wearing a wetsuit of a dead woman. And right from the start, you know this bitch is gonna die. And of course she does. I went to the bathroom at one point, so they get through this one area into this new area. Victoria, of course, has a bit of hypothermia, and George suffers from the bends. this type of disease where all these nitrogen bubbles go into your blood. It is very painful, I hear. And you kind of puke blood a bit. So he dies. So, do a little more exploration and come to this one area where it's all this churning water. I mean, just water sort of going around, but you can't go into it because it's kind of like as Frank described it, it's a meat grinder down there. But they found but there's a way across. Well, they saw an exit just on the other side of it. So Josh swings some cables, gets over there, secures some other cables. So Victoria's gonna get there. Well, then Carl goes over there. So it's Josh and Carl on the one area, while Victoria and Frank are on the other side. Carl does something stupid and Victoria gets her hair caught in these pulleys. And this is the only thing I can really say is that a bit of the pain these characters go through, the ones you don't really care about, it's a bit more interesting than the death. I mean, Victoria, her death, before she died, it was a bit hard to look at. I mean, her hair is caught, she's bleeding, and this was a bit startling to me. Part of her head, where her hair was attached, was actually ripping off. Visually, it was really kind of startling and it's kind of scary. But then she tries to cut her hair out, but then cuts the rope, then falls into the water and dies. So it's just the three left, but we don't really care about Victoria. Victoria's kind of an asshole or a bitch. So 3 left, and there's only one scuba suit left because Victoria was holding hers on her back. So Frank, Carl, and Josh then come across this one pool they had to get through, but Carl's kind of pissed and he just sort of goes off without the two. So it's just Josh and Frank, the father and the son. And this is where I'll give credit to the movie. This is where it only really hits me on the emotional basis because Frank and Josh haven't spoken to each other for years, so we get to know a little more about them. But the only one we really do care about is Frank. Josh, we don't learn 2 shits. We don't know 2 things about him. And, you know, I couldn't really care if he died, but there's some nice moments. So they're kind of stuck to think, oh, what the hell do we do? But then, Josh finds another cave, and the two go through it and actually come across a way out, but they can't actually get out because, number 1, it's 100 feet off the ground. Number 2, there aren't any caves or routes leading out to it. But it's this open waterways where they get a bit of fresh water, and they find a tank, like a Japanese tank. And they get a bit of fuel there, and make a fire, warm themselves up. They have food on them, so... And that's a bit of the credit I'll give to the movie, is that it's one of those father-son movies. But I saw this with my buddy, so. And then they decide, okay, let's keep going. Then they eventually run into Carl, who's kind of he hasn't eaten anything for a while, so he's kind of going a bit iffy. They see him. He's run to this one area where everything's sort of. Then you see Victoria's dead body, and a bit startling. It's all like spun around by the water. But then after that, Frank and Josh decide to leave Carl because Carl, quite frankly, doesn't give 2 shits about them. So he kind of gets into a bit of a fight with Frank. Frank knocks him out, and then the 2 leave. They come across this other cave where there's this waterway which leads to the ocean, and they're 2 prepared to go. Then Carl comes out of nowhere, bashes Frank with a rock, and then Frank gets back up, and then the 2 fight a bit, but Carl manages to push him down and hurt his spine. Then Josh and Carl fight a bit, and Josh manages to hurt Carl a bit, and then check on his father, and his spine is broken, like it's like ripped through his back. Once again, visually startling, and Frank is the only character I actually really did care for, because he knows what he's doing. Like, he may seem like an asshole, but he's the guy who's gonna, like, save your asses. I mean, no point not showing him a little respect. So, they only have one oxygen tank left. Carl gets back up, ready to finish the job. Josh sort of says to him, you know, it's because of him we're all still breathing. So, Carl just sort of jumps in the little pool they have to... Hey! Carl jumps in the little pool that leads to the ocean. He doesn't die, he dies. And that's a death I kind of wanted, because Carl was an asshole, and I don't really care. They get a nice few words between Frank and Josh before Frank, because Frank, he can't move, and he doesn't want to just sit there and die. So Josh asks him to drown him, which Josh is a bit reluctant to do, but in the end he does. And then he tells him before he dies, never give up, or never ever give up. So Josh, with the last oxygen tank and some glow sticks he found from Carl, takes the oxygen tank, goes through the pool, and just sort of swims, trying to find a way out. At one point, he reaches Carl's dead body, just sort of sitting there. He must have obviously drowned. Come on, go! My dog is barking. And then at one point, Josh's glow stick wears out. So, something I forgot to mention is that Frank, years ago, gave Josh this boar's tooth with a light in it, and Josh used this to find his way through. And at one point, the oxygen tank runs out, and you can do. Have you ever seen the movie Balto? There's one scene where Balto is sucking air from under the ice. Josh kind of does that with some rocks. And there's one part where he thinks, I'm not going to make it. And then he gets a vision from Frank. Frank tells him, you can do it. But he doesn't say to him, never ever give up. He just says, do it. And then he finds his way out, gets saved by some people. And maybe I found a few more positives in that, but overall, the suspense is bad. Some of the characters we don't give two shits about. Everyone who dies, we don't care. Most of the people, except from like 1 or 2, we care about. And it's just, why is this being labeled as a James Cameron film? Like, I mean, to be fair, it does have James Cameron written all over it. I mean, water, that's one thing. And he's only the executive producer. And the 3D, my god, this was a big waste of 3D. I mean, I don't know what to say about this. I honestly thought it was that bad. It was that bad. I mean, I can't even find words to describe how bad it was. I mean, now some of you may like it, but this is getting a 5. This is getting a 3 out of. This is. I'll be generous. I'm gonna give this a 5 out of 10. Max! And my dog is barking. Well, that's the review. It's getting a 5 out of 10. You know, it's just like this. I'm curious what the true story was. I mean, because apparently, based on the true story, it was the guy had a different name, but they didn't call him. I think his name was Alan. They didn't call this guy Alan. No one was named Alan in this entire movie. So it's just painfully bad. I mean, there's some parts that are good, like claustrophobia, but it's bad. So that's the review. See you later.